What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, yesterday, another game leaked out online. This one, however, was a bit more unfortunate because it does kind of show us where Ubisoft is right now with the Splinter Cell franchise. We'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to talk about a series of tweets yesterday from Insomniac that really had the internet buzzing with a whole bunch of nostalgia and even made people wonder, wait a minute, are they teasing a potential return for some of those older franchises? Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Final Fantasy 3 and Final Fantasy 4, except the remakes that were put on, for example, iOS devices. And what's interesting here is ahead of the Square Enix showcase that will be taking place at E3, it appears that the titles have been kind of shifted around a bit, maybe to make sure you can identify them specifically as the 3D remake that was done for Final Fantasy 3 and Final Fantasy 4. We can see this tweet. This was spotted by Sean saying Square changed the titles and icons of the iOS versions of Final Fantasy 3 and Final Fantasy 4. We can see the example there. Final Fantasy 3, and then we have 3D remake. It is very obvious that they want you to know this is a 3D remake of Final Fantasy 3, almost to like differentiate it from another version of the game. And there have been a lot of rumors that maybe Square is going to go back and do a Final Fantasy collection that could pile in a couple of different Final Fantasy games, or sell them individually and kind of bring up the original Final Fantasy 3 or Final Fantasy 4, for example, and put them on the iOS store, maybe on current consoles like the Switch and PlayStation and Xbox. And I would really like to see that. I think it'd be great. This could also just be them kind of playing around with the title so that it shows up better in search on the Play Store or on the iOS App Store. That's also a possibility. So keep that in mind. It's just something to think about maybe as we go into that Square Enix showcase. Also, we got a bit of an update for a game that I am really looking forward to. We found out about it a little while ago now, right? I think over a year ago. It's been a bit. That's Sports Story, and it looks like we could be seeing it here pretty soon, at least an update around it. We can see this over on Twitter, put out by Sidebar Games. Sports Story update. Everything is coming together now. Please look forward to more updates going forward. We have much to share. It's a small update, right? There's some saying, hey, we're getting things prepared to show this game off again, and it feels like it's been a while, but I'm excited to see what they have here after what I would consider an awesome game with Golf Story. Seriously, if you have not played that game, it is certainly worth the money. It reminded me very much of like the older Mario Golf RPGs that were on like the Game Boy or the Game Boy Advance. This had a bit more of an adventure kind of style to it, where you went around to things other than just play golf, which was really cool, and the humor was pretty fun too. Certainly worth the $10 or $15, or if you can find it physically at some Best Buy stores, certainly add that one to the collection. But Sports Story is going to incorporate, well, more sports and activities to do, so I'm curious to see where they can take the overall franchise going forward. And we do have a Nintendo Direct that's going to be about 40 minutes long, and then even a Treehouse presentation after that, so I'm hoping it shows up somewhere in there so we can find out more about Sports Story. Oh, and this was a fun story that got passed around the internet, and people weren't really sure, I guess, how to look at this, but take a look here. This was actually found in that CD Projekt Red leak that got out online. It even apparently has like the code or the source code for the Witcher 3 next-gen version that's not even out yet, but it says CDPR created its own bug compilation before release, Cyber El Bugato 2020, and it appears that a lot of the developers at CD Projekt Red would kind of record and put this big montage of different bugs together to kind of look at the end of development, and it was getting passed around. People were saying, well, obviously they knew the game wasn't ready, and that's come up that developers were like, hey, we need more time with this game, and we had the suits and the directors and the people at the top essentially push the game out there anyway. But people were saying, other developers online were like, we'll do this for fun. It's people at the office kind of having fun with it. And some of the different glitches and bugs that were being shown were legitimately funny, right? So as they're going through testing, oh, that's pretty funny. Let me go ahead and record that. And we'll put it into this cut up version of all these bugs back to back to back. And we can look at it at the end of development to see how far we've come. Unfortunately, they didn't really go that far, it seems, when they released it. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with this unfortunate leak, I'll say, from Ubisoft. Now, it appears this game will not be at E3 for their Ubisoft Forward, as it's apparently in very early development. And it looks like this kind of leaked out through promotional material, internal documents that were put up online, and it does look like Ubisoft has gone around and started copyright striking these different images just to make sure they're not up online, kind of showcasing the game in its early stages, and maybe plans that won't even make it to the finish line whenever it does come out. So I can't show you the images here, but they are pretty easy to find online. Anyway, let's head over here to VGC because they also went a little further and corroborated some of this information here, where they say leaked Battle Cat is Ubisoft's new Splinter Cell, Division, and Ghost Recon FPS game. Yeah, that's right. It does appear that it's going to be a multiplayer PvP title. This was shared by Twitter user ZeroBytes, showing a series of images showing the title on Sunday. This was from internal marketing documents. VGC understands the images are authentic and that Battle Cat is a first-person shooter targeting consoles and PC. They go on a bit further to say that the game is in early stages of development, and we could be actually quite a ways off, as it will not be at the Ubisoft Forward event. They go on a bit further to say it combines the Splinter Cell, Ghost Recon, Breakpoint, and Division games into a single Tom Clancy multiplayer title. Now, with those internal documents, they showed off two modes. One was essentially where you're escorting a payload, and then the other side is trying to defend, and the other one you're apparently capturing rings from downed opponents. Those seem pretty standard across the board here. The idea, though, is depending on, I guess, which franchise you have your character from or characters, you'll have unique abilities and all of this. And looking at this, it makes sense for what Ubisoft is trying to do. We just saw them put Sam Fisher in that cell phone game, remember that, with Elite Squad? And oddly enough, we've seen Ubisoft do collaborations with Sam Fisher, dropping him into, Rainbow Six and Ghost Recon. Like, he's been making the rounds here. It's just odd that he hasn't had his own game for quite a while Ubisoft has been doing a lot with Division and Ghost Recon, and it's the only thing I can think of, because it was mentioned before, they're not really sure how to make another Splinter Cell game, at least one that would work with their current thought process when it comes to putting a game together, which, I mean, we see what a lot of their games are with these kind of big open world games that can have live service elements or additional purchases and revenue spend kind of brought into the mix. And if you take a game like Splinter Cell that's more or less a linear story-driven narrative experience, I mean, how do you work something like what we've seen with experience boosters from Assassin's Creed in a Splinter Cell? And I think that's the biggest issue they have now, is like Splinter Cell fans, this is like what they have to look forward to, something like Battle Cat, or pick up their phone to do Elite Squad, or play some of the smaller sections in these other games where Sam Fisher kind of shows up into a live service like game with like a Ghost Recon, right? So I don't know if we're ever going to see another Splinter Cell game from Ubisoft, unless they decide, hey, this PvP game we're doing with Battle Cat could actually use some additional promotion from, believe it or not, another Splinter Cell game that maybe doesn't have like this crazy high budget. I don't think we need those games every single time. Like, would you be okay if Ubisoft went to the drawing board and said, you know what, we're going to make a 10 to 12 hour narrative experience in the Splinter Cell universe, and yes, it will be a full-priced game. I think I'd be okay with that. Like, Resident Evil Village came out, it wasn't this super long, drawn-out game, but I feel like I got my money's worth for it at full price, and I think we get enough games that strive to be 50, 60 hours long, where people don't even get halfway through it, that we could actually use some of those shorter, more narrative-driven experiences from third parties like Ubisoft with something like Splinter Cell. But let me know your thoughts on that one, and how do you feel about Sam Fisher being used in, once again, another game that's not a Splinter Cell game, but really a free-to-play looking style PvP game codenamed Battle Cat. Next up, let's talk about literally a blast from the past with Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. Now, the embargo for reviews is going to lift today, and I'm sure we'll be talking about the Metacritic score and reviews in tomorrow's Newswave, and it is out Friday. I'll be picking it up immediately. Really looking forward to playing this one, but they had a set of interesting tweets, that being from Insomniac, kind of talking about this new object that they were showing off on Twitter. We can see this tweet here saying, use the Rhino 8. I got it working, and right now it's our only shot. Well, it's opening a rift, and something's coming through. Now, after this, we had tweets kind of going out from Insomniac Games throughout the afternoon. For example, we had this one. Is that another warbot getting sucked into a dimensional rift? This having the hashtag Sunset Overdrive, Ratchet PS5 Takeover. We have PlayStation tagged in it, and immediately people started freaking out, and I saw Sunset Overdrive start trending on Twitter because a lot of us thought, wait a minute, are they hinting towards Sunset Overdrive being revealed for the PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, as that has been a rumor for a while now that we were going to see those that game remastered for those platforms. I still think that's going to happen. It was just interesting to see Insomniac do this, but then it gets a little more interesting. We can see the next tweet. Did that sly-looking raccoon just get pulled into an open rift? This one hit the internet hard. I mean, people were really freaking out about this because there's Sly Cooper, and a lot of us thought, wait, Sony forgot about Sly Cooper. Well, it seems like Insomniac hasn't, as we can see them pulling Sly through a rift here. And then to follow that up, they also did something with Horizon Zero Dawn, or the Horizon franchise as well, but everyone was really zoned in on Sly Cooper. And I'd like to think that this is a way for them to kind of do callbacks to some of the other franchises. For a little while there, we thought they were going to have these different characters almost as mini crossovers that would take place in Ratchet and Clank as you're kind of going through dimensions. What if you landed in a very small section of the Sly Cooper franchise and you kind of look around and you just go back through and then you go to another dimension, just as a fun little Easter egg kind of thrown in there. It's something fun to think about, but I like to see the reaction online because I almost wonder if even Sony realized that, wait a minute, people do want Sly Cooper? Yes, Sony, people would like to see a new Sly Cooper game. I really don't think that's hard to understand or believe, but again, Sony is weighing the options around which games to create when, which studios, and all of this. So while I would like to see a new Sly Cooper game, or even the next Sunset Overdrive, it's still something that may be off in the distance or not happen at all. It's, again, Sony looking at those big AAA experiences, big budget titles that can really push the PlayStation Studios name to the next level. I still think there's room for games like Sly Cooper, though, so we'll see if maybe this was a little more than just a marketing stunt. Could be a tease going forward, something to keep an eye out for. Next up, let's talk about a game that will not be at the Ubisoft Forward event this week, and it's now been confirmed that Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time will be missing the event and will actually be looking to release next year. Remember, this was revealed during a Ubisoft Forward months and months ago, and didn't get the best reception online is what we'll go with there. The game itself just looked off, especially the character models, and a lot of people online let them know about that. I think there's a lot of people who really want Sands of Time Remake to be great, really good. And, well, it looks like it's going to take a bit more time for that to happen. We can see this was tweeted out by the Prince of Persia account online, saying, as you might have already read, Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time Remake will not be in Ubisoft Forward. We are making great progress for our game to release next year, but we are not ready to share any additional information just yet. We will share an update as soon as we are ready. Now, looking at this, my thoughts right away, take as much time as you need because I want the Prince of Persia: Sands of Time Remake to be very good, because looking around, I don't think there are a lot of people currently, especially new gamers who are coming into gaming, who even played Sands of Time, the original one, so this might even be their first experience in general with Prince of Persia. So if they need more time to make sure it's as good as it can possibly be, by all means take it. I'd rather wait for a great version of Sands of Time rather than push out one that's rushed and a lower budget, because that was kind of the word going around, is Ubisoft wasn't really looking to put a lot of money into this remake, and unfortunately that kind of showed through when they showed the initial trailer for it. But I do like the decision to delay it, push it back, maybe put some more money into this thing to make a really good version of Prince of Persia: Sands of Time, a remake that makes sense, we'll say, in now 2022. Because if the game came out and it was bad, who knows what that would mean for the Prince of Persia franchise overall. Now, it's also important to note that the studio that's working on this is located in India, and I saw a lot of people pointing out, COVID in general has been really bad in India, so there's also key factors there. Of course, force working against them when it comes to remote work and just trying to be safe overall. So once again, we'll look towards Prince of Persia Sands of Time Remake next year. Hey, we could get a Ubisoft forward earlier in the year, maybe first half, and then we can see the game again and see what improvements they've been able to make. But I am happy that Ubisoft stepped back and decided, you know what, we'll give them a bit more time and hopefully a bit more money to make this the best Prince of Persia Sands of Time remake it can be. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about a new benefit that appears to be heading to Xbox Game Pass. We can see this tweet here from the Xbox Game Pass account saying, at first we were going to make this big flashy video to tease the next Xbox Game Pass Ultimate perk, but in the end we decided to go with something a little more low-key. I wonder what they can be talking about there. Low-key, is something coming up for Loki here soon on Disney Plus? That's been rumored for a couple of months now that Disney Plus would just be added in as an extra benefit for being a Game Pass member. And we've seen Microsoft make some of these partnerships with Game Pass already, especially with a ton of content just kind of coming in all at once with, for example, EA Play. That was pretty cool to see a ton of games just being added in. This is more on the streaming side, obviously, with movies and TV shows, but it's still just more entertainment and more value for Game Pass. And that's what Microsoft's really trying to do, is aggressively build up this service so that they can build up the overall install size. The more value it has, the easier it is, obviously, to sell. And when they do the big card flash on screen and it's like, oh, here's, Disney Plus and EA Play and any other partnerships, it makes it a lot easier to sell at like $15 a month. I actually expect this to be announced maybe this week ahead of E3, because I think they've said TV at E3 more than enough times for the next couple of generations at this point. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, have you played the original Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time? 61% of you said no. Man, that's tough. That's why Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time remake has to be really good, because there's a lot of people just not play the original, and this might even be their first time playing a Prince of Persia game. So you can see why I have no problem with them pushing this game back to next year, because if this game comes out, gets crushed by reviews, no one really buys it, you know what? Ubisoft might be looking and be like, you know what? That's why we're not making any more Prince of Persia games. So take your time with this one. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Kieran saying, I made a bet Metroid Prime 4 was going to release before Shin Megami Tensei 5. Looks like I lost that bet. You know what's really funny is if you told yourself, hey, Shin Megami Tensei 5, it's not going to come out until like holiday 2021. I think everyone would have taken that bet in 2017, and been like, oh yeah, Metroid Prime 4 is definitely coming out before that. But here we are with a restart development. You know what's interesting? I wonder when Metroid Prime 4 would have come out if they didn't have to restart development and then shift over production to Retro Studios. Is that a game that could have come out in 2020? Is that a game that would have been coming out holiday 2020? Like, could we be like 6 months out, not even, from Metroid Prime 4 releasing? Something to think about there. I do hope someday, whatever went down with Nintendo and I guess Bandai does surface, and we can see what exactly was so bad that they had to completely restart development and hand off to Retro Studios. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, it really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today, whether there's this PvP game that Ubisoft is apparently doing now in early development. That's kind of where the Splinter Cell franchise is. It's just part of the collaboration, but it's the only one that doesn't have its own game right now. Should Ubisoft make a new Splinter Cell? Let me know about that one. And then also, what do you think about Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time remake? Are you someone who played the original and hoping this one turns out to be really good? And then all those teases, I guess through marketing with Insomniac, do you think there was any thought of testing the waters there again with something like Sly Cooper Online? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.